We have a problem. We have blown our surge protector for our unit. Good morning, everybody. This is David with Tigner Adventures, and as you've seen on the opening screen, we have a problem with our Watchdog. Our Watchdog is our surge protector, and interesting enough, we've blown the surge module on it. So it's kind of, the surge protector, the way it works is you got this module, and you're always getting, or can get, these little surges, especially if everybody on the line that you're plugged into turns their ACs on and off, or whatever the case may be. You might get a little bit of a surge. And so the surge protector protects your unit from having issues. And the idea there is that each time something happens, that's like one little hit against that. And eventually, as you're hitting that surge module, eventually it's gonna just give up. It only has so many times it can be hit to protect your rig, and at some point, depending on your power things, then you may have an issue, and that module will be depleted. And so in this particular case, if you look back at this screen that we have here, we had a error on one of our lines, and the reason was because the breaker in the box is loose, and when I went to turn it off and on, it kind of flipped out and everything and created a surge that eventually just blew out that module. So we're going to go through today and show you a little bit about that and replace that module. Interesting enough, when I arrived, all these breakers were on, and so I flipped them all off and went ahead and plugged my unit in. That is the standard way that you should be doing that, because otherwise you're going to get arcing on the end of your plug as you're trying to plug it in, because you've got voltage and you've got a draw, and so you naturally are going to get some kind of arcing. And so to prevent that, you turn those all off. Well, I turned them all off, and then I plugged my module in and turned the 50 amp on, and I'll show you here how loose it is and what caused the problem. These breakers are set up that they actually tip back this way. So the wiring is hooked to the bottom of these under this panel. You can't see it. And then they go forward into a little knife thing. And if you've watched some of my solar stuff, you'll know what I'm talking about. But anyway, they lock into position, and then they're locked in there really nice and tight. The problem with this particular one is this is loose. And so I just touched it, and just touching it, if you look down here at my Watchdog, it has gone off, and I now have an error light on that states it will go red when the park power does not have a neutral. Now, there's a few different things that you have to have on your power. So this is a 50 amp circuit. 30 amp, you only have basically a L1. You only have one hot line. On a 50 amp, you have two hot lines. And so L1 and L2, those have power going on them. But you also have two other wires that have to be working, and that is the ground. And a lot of people have issues with the ground, and that's a different error on this particular box if the ground's bad. And then you have your neutral wire, and that's the piece that's kind of like your return, if you want to think of it that way, on your AC stuff. So RV power is 110 volts, and typically, like if you're doing a house, you're going to wire this for 240 volts for like your stove or for your dryer. It takes both of those L1 and L2s and puts them together to make 240. But on a RV, we don't do that. We only use L1 and L2 in the 110 version volt mode, and that gives us 50 amps on each one of those legs. So overall, if you have a 50 amp rig, you're really getting a total of 100 amps of power through the pedestal, where on a 30 amp unit, the max they can get is 30 amps. But interesting enough, I called out the park electrician and said, hey, there's a problem with this. I just touched this and this sucker goes bad. And so he took his little voltmeter out and stuck it on there, and says, oh, I'm getting voltage just fine. Well, yeah, because I pushed on it and it's now working. But he didn't want to do nothing about it. He says, I'm off in 10 minutes and I'm leaving. So it's like, okay, whatever. And I said, and another interesting thing was all these circuit breakers were on. He goes, yeah, we like to leave them on so that the ground works properly. I was like, what are you talking about? The breaker has nothing to do with the ground. So I don't know. He's got a whole different philosophy about power than I know about, and I'm not, you know, a professional, right? I'm an RVer, but I have done a lot of wiring in my life, and I have never heard that from any of my electrician friends. So anyway, kind of a weird deal. You should really turn it off and on. But I think what you need to do when you are turning it off and on, because you can flip that down and maybe pop that breaker out if it's not really tied in there well, is to hold onto the breaker as you're flipping it off and on. And that will help minimize having issues. But in our case, we have an issue. We're going to pull this out and we're going to replace the surge module on the actual surge protector. The nice thing about Watchdog is it's got a nice warranty on it. And so one of the pieces of the warranty is if it fails, the very first time it does, anyway, I should say, as far as the surge module is concerned, they replace it for free. Otherwise, this particular one is about 50 bucks, and they're all about the same price. The difference is that you're just replacing this one module and you're not replacing the whole unit, which can be pretty expensive. So I've had units before where the light goes out that says the surge protection's active, and the light goes out and the only option you have is just to replace the whole thing. So the nice thing about this is I just have to replace this module. So all it is this little box. They sent it to me for free. I just gave them a call and said, hey, I have this problem. They go, oh, no problem, and they send it out. Otherwise, you can just order on Amazon, and I'll put the link there. But the biggest thing is that you need to make sure the one that you're ordering is for your unit. They do have a number of different ones, and so that's one thing to keep in mind. So this particular one is just this little box right here. This is the little communication cable. These are the things that the wires plug into, and we're going to open this up and you'll see what I'm talking about. So there's a number of screws that are on this, and I have already undone them. So this is the unit right here. I kind of pulled it up just a little bit so the door fell off, so that's one thing you got to pay attention to when we put it back together. The other thing is this little nut right here has to be unscrewed because there's two halves right here. So I'm going to go ahead and just lift this off and keep all the screws in there. So I'm just going to go straight up. There is a rubber gasket around it right there. So we just want to make sure that we put that back into the little slot that it's supposed to be, so that when we put it together, it's still watertight. And needless to say, you want to have this unplugged. So if we tip this up right here, you can see here is my surge module. That's the same as this particular module right here. And you'll notice that these wires are all color coded. Here's green for ground. There's a green here. L2 is red there. N is white, and L1 is black. So they're just these little screws on the side right here. So you just use a regular Phillips screwdriver to loosen those up and to tighten them. So you're just sliding the little terminal in there. And then of course this little guy right here, and he's got a little push clip right here. So we're going to go ahead and just push that clip and pull that off. So there, pretty simple. The actual push piece of it is right here on this side, so you can kind of see that, and it just lifts that up. So that's pretty cool. And then this just lifts out of here, and then you'll notice that this looks just like the other one, except they've made this one nice for color coding wise, right? Make it simple, because this is user fix. So I'm just going to go ahead and undo all these little screws, just loosen them up. And this is just a number 2 screwdriver, Phillips screwdriver I should say. So those come out. So there are all the terminals that you're going to push into this one here. So again, this is going this direction, so green, red, white, and then black, and that's how this is laid out right here. So if I turn this around this way, can see that they're all color coded. So that's pretty nice. It makes it really easy. So, okay, first I'm gonna loosen these up. Okay, now we're just gonna push them in. So once they're all in there, nice and tight and snug, then we're going to go ahead and tighten these down. So we'll just do a few turns on each one, kind of snug them up just a little bit so we can get them all in the right place. And then you want to make sure these are nice and tight. So just put a nice little turn on them. There was nothing that said anything about torquing. I like to torque stuff, but we set it back into that little slot that it goes into, and that's done. And the last piece we do is to connect this back together again. So it only goes one way, so snaps that back on, and we are done. Just that fast, that easy to replace that. This is the old module. So then it's a matter of making sure this gasket's in place. So this is just going to sit on there. Now, this one we have to unscrew these. I've seen some where they're just a plug that unplugs and plugs back in. So it really depends on which one you're dealing with. So you just got to pay attention to what your model number is. So, okay, we're just going to go ahead and put this all back together, and it'll slide back in here pretty easy. We just have to get it into the right little grooves. And then again, we have to deal with our door right here, which has these two little spots on it. So we got to get them back into these two little holes right here. So we'll put that in there like that, there. And that's it. So you don't have to tighten those very tight. Remember, this is a rubber gasket going around here. But the last thing we do is when we're done, this half is back together again, so we have to put this little nut back on there. We just screw it on, pretty simple. And there it is, all put back together, all ready to go plug back into the post. I have moved to a new RV spot, another RV place. So my 50 amp breaker is off. I'm gonna go ahead and just plug this in. And when I'm messing around with the breaker, I think the best thing to do is put your hand on the flat part of the breaker and just hold it as you're flipping it on and off on these breakers, because you don't know what anyone else has done, and then that way you can make sure that it's a good connection. So I'm going to go ahead and hold that. Just turn that on, and my Watchdog is providing power, and then you heard that click noise. So everything is good. It's tested it all out, and it's good. Let's see what the app says. So this is the app. It's showing 120 volts on each line, line 1, line 2. And so we're going to go ahead and hook up our rig, and then we'll check it out again. I've gone ahead and hooked up my rig to the Watchdog, and I've turned it back on again, and now you can see that I am pulling some watts here. So everything is looking really good. Well, I hope this was beneficial for you as far as giving you an idea how easy it is to change these modules out. They don't go bad very often. It really kind of just depends where you're at. And we just had some different areas that had some pretty, not great power, and the weather's been up and down lately. So we just happened to burn that module up. But it's nice that, they replace it for free the first time. And then after that, worst case is it's $50 for another one. So, but at least I don't have to worry about it. If that would have been any other surge protector, you would have had to replace the whole surge protector. And I've been in that boat before. This is a much better setup. Just take my word for it. So I really enjoy having the Watchdog. It's been excellent. We used the other one we had all over Canada last year and all the way back, 14,000 miles of traveling. And we've never had an issue with that one. And so it's just that we've been in some bad areas lately. And if you recall, back in this particular video, we were at a RV park, and we did not have Watchdogs. This was before we actually purchased it, and we burned up our microwave. So You know, power is not any guaranteed out there from anybody, and some of these parks, I don't know that they really know what they're talking about. So anyway, bottom line is this fixes the problem. We're back online again. We can use our AC and feel good about the protection that we're getting, and if there happens to be any surges, we're covered. So thanks for coming along, and hopefully this again was beneficial to you. If it is, you know, give us a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, maybe consider subscribing, just helping us grow a little bit. We do appreciate that. In the meantime, we'll just hope that we see you somewhere down the road, or maybe on another one of our videos. So you guys take care.